We've been running for 17 years, and we have done a variety of export over the years, but about 4 years ago, we decided to focus specifically on growing our export side of the business. And we set about targeting doing 3 countries a year for the foreseeable future. And we exceeded that target. We ended up doing 4 countries a year, and over the 4 years between starting the program and now, we've gone into 16. We're actually up to 20 countries now. During that process, we did a variety of things, but one of the things we did was working with the Department for International Trade, which was then called UKTI. And in that process, they recommended that because of the success of our growth, that we enter the Queen's Awards. And so we entered that, and then last year we actually won one of these awards, and we got to meet the Queen, which is really exciting. So today I'm going to talk to you about some of the things that we had to do to grow successfully in that way, and some of the obstacles that we had to overcome, and some of the opportunities that came our way as a result of that, and basically, you know, the sort of best way to kind of go about the process. So I'm on Twitter, by the way, and it's Jeremy Corner, and my company's Blue Eyed Sun. So if you're on Twitter and you want to tweet away, please knock yourself out, and always appreciate any shares for the content. Also, my slides are up on slideshare.net/Jeremy Corner. I've done this talk and other previous export talks. The video, this is being videoed today, so you'll be able to catch on a bit later and share it, with anyone you think that's interested. So, the first, I'm talking about 7 key stages in this talk today. So the first stage is preparation. It sounds kind of obvious, but some people just sort of find themselves falling into it in our business. Being prepared is obviously really important for a number of reasons. You want to have a good idea of what you're going to do in terms of your target. So I would keep it simple to start with. So if like we had our target of 3 countries a year. We knew that we could cope with 4, but we thought doing 5 might be a bit much. So it's important to know what your expectations are going into the project. But it's also important to kind of prepare by doing your research up front. So we subscribe to all the main gift and trade magazines, and we read lots of articles. They often feature people from international retailers, international distributors, international sales agents. And we started compiling a list of these people early on, way before we started distributing. We did trade shows, and we had people come to see us at the shows, and again we kept on compiling lists until we really understood in each market who were the top 2 or 3 distributors, who were the sales agents that we could speak to. Would it be a better option just to go direct to a retailer rather than to sell into through distributors, and so on. So we've made lots of lists. So I recommend you start building your database of people early on, and you can find them in all sorts of places. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Also, it's important to do financial projections, so to do some guesstimates on how you think things will go. You can use your experience in the British market. It won't tell you everything about other markets, but you can do population analysis of the UK market and compare the size of Germany to the UK and get an idea as to, well, we've got this number of shops in the UK, this number of shops in Germany, so actually Germany will be a similar sized market if we do really well in it. This is our top end of what we're expecting, and this is our bottom end. And what's important about that is obviously cash flow. So you need to do forecasts as to whether you can handle those cash flow situations, because often when you sell into distributors, you might initially be able to do a pro forma invoice where they pay you up front, but as the relationships develop, those distributors are going to need to take 30 or 60 or sometimes even 90 days to pay you, and that's going to have a serious effect on your cash flow. You're essentially you're paying for the stock to be made. That's month 1, you're sending it out to the country and you're not getting paid until 3 months later. That can cause you issues. And they say that a loss of profits over the years is like a cancer in your business, but bad cash flow is like a heart attack. So it can literally, even if you're successful and you're growing into all these countries, you run out of cash, you're in real trouble. So prepare your financials, start building your lists, and research each market. The Department for International Trade is really good in terms of doing analysis of certain markets, and they've already done a lot of work in various industries. So, definitely speak to these guys. There's a few of them here, and I understand you can make appointments to chat with people from different countries, so you can get an understanding of, well, how well do cards sell in Slovenia or Italy or wherever it is. So how do you go about finding these customers? We did it in a variety of ways. Obviously, there are the trade magazines. We started to build our list doing that. We spoke to the Department for International Trade as well. We spoke to our trade associations. So there's the Giftware Association, is very good, and the Greeting Card Association in our industry was also very supportive. And they sometimes have lists of people, or you might have a situation where you meet one of these people at a trade show and you can go and chat with the organization saying, do you know anyone else who's dealt with these people? So, and get some references on whether they're reliable or not. So, and trade shows last year is the other really good one for us. So we do 5 shows a year. We do Top Draw Spring, Spring Fair, PG Live, which is a greeting card specific show, the Harrogate show called Home and Gift in July, and then Autumn Fair in September time. For us, for the greeting card market, Spring Fair has been the best for distributors, and I would say probably for the giftware market will be the same. So it is a big show to do though, so sometimes with card publishers I recommend they start a slightly smaller show and don't rush into distribution, hold back to do that later. Make all your mistakes locally before you go abroad, otherwise those mistakes are leveraged and the consequences of those mistakes are larger. So yeah, I would say Spring Fair for us and Autumn Fair. I'm not just saying that because I'm speaking here, but they genuinely have been the stronger shows for us. For cards, PG Live was also very good. So those are ways of finding them. When you do have these people come to see you at shows, and sometimes you'll get emails from people, it's really important to take as much information as you can. So the questions that I'll ask typically from them when they arrive at our stand, they'll come along and say, hi, I'm a distributor from Italy or whatever, is how long have you been going? How many outlets do you sell into currently? How many sales reps do you have? What type of companies do you currently distribute in your country? Do you distribute any other British companies? Usually for me, I have quite a good awareness of where I sit in the British market, so I know if he's carrying one of my competitors that I sell well with in the UK, the chances are that he's going to be selling into the right types of shops for my cards. So actually, just to contextualize it for you, for those that don't know my business, our greeting cards are all sort of upper end of the market, so they're all hand finished or handmade, and they sell into stores in the UK like John Lewis, Waitrose, Harrods, Paperchase, those kind of stores. So you get an idea of where we sit here. So for me, it's super important in these other markets because to go into the right type of stores in Italy and Germany and France and so on. I mean, you will always, for us, we will always get people approaching us saying, oh, I sell in France, but it turns out they sell just into sort of low-end supermarkets. And it's really important that we don't, it sounds really exciting because the numbers all sound big, but it's not right for our brand. So you need to know what's right for your brand and make sure that you ask them lots of questions about what else they carry that might also fit with your brand. It doesn't actually have to be a lot of other British publishers, and sometimes we find with our distributors that we've done some deals where the distributor carries, I don't know, maybe 10 of the best companies in the UK, and you think, oh, this is the ideal distributor for me, but actually because they've already got 10 other great publishers already, you might be better off with a sort of slightly lesser known distributor who's only got you and one or two others, or you and a nice jewelry or a nice gift bag. So, for example, in Italy, we just took on a distributor last year. We had a more established one before, wasn't doing much business for us. We took on a new guy. This guy he's been in the selling cards for 2 years in Italy. He's gone into 2,000 shops, done 2 million sales in 2 years. He's hungry. I like them when they're hungry. And so, we started working with him, and immediately, like within 3 months, he'd done more than the entire year from our previous Italian distributor. So sometimes it's a hard call to make. You've got a distributor, you're kind of doing okay, but you feel like they might do better. Then you've got to ask around quite a bit because you don't want to burn bridges as one and jump into bed with another, so to speak, and then find out actually it's the same or worse. So, asking a lot of questions it happens that our industry is quite friendly, so we can ask competitors of ours, oh, you use this distributor, how'd you get on with them? And generally, that's another thing I found really useful about trade shows. People think, oh, it's all about the sales orders. But for me, it's a lot about information, and about people I meet and people I meet that can help me with information further down the line. So I definitely find the shows super useful for finding people abroad. So once you found these guys and you start selling into them, you want to start growing the business. Now, another thing to be wary of when you first start is a lot of them, it'll seem like it's not a very big order, or it seems like it's, you think, oh, this isn't very much. They said they'll sell thousands, but they've only ordered 500 quid's worth or £1,000 worth. Bear in mind that these people are business people like yourselves, and they'll want to be sensible with how they take you into their market. They'll want to test. Any sensible business will want to test. In fact, if they're not testing, I'd be wary. And I just actually literally just spoke to someone half an hour, a friend of mine who's got another publishing business. He's had 2 people from Brazil that came and approached him one year. They were ex-city bankers, and they spent £150,000 worth of cards with him, he specializes in pop-up cards, imported them into Brazil, didn't test at all, and 12, 18 months later, they'd gone bust. So, it sounds... sometimes people will try and oversell to you, and you just got to be wary of that. But equally, don't worry too much if they're just taking small orders to start. So I feel more comfortable when they do that, and have a close dialogue when you start with them. So, for us, in our cards, we have language on ours. So you might sell gift products that don't have language, so that's great because you don't have that. But you might have packaging language issues. So pay close attention at the front end that the packaging or the messages on the cards work for them. So some of our countries will test some English products, and so they don't get something bespoke made for them. But then once they're happy, they'll then roll it into German or French or whatever the language is in their country. Obviously, the countries like Australia and America and New Zealand and South Africa, even English-speaking countries, they are great for exporting in to start with, and they're good test countries for you. I mean, America can be quite a monster, so depending on what you're selling. So, those kind of smaller ones, it's great because it's English, the packaging doesn't need to change that much, it's easy to communicate, less issues in terms of making mistakes. So you might sort of, if you were targeting places, you might go, well, we'll target those ones to begin with. If you are, any card publishers in the audience out of interest? So if you are publishing cards, the American market, just briefly, I won't bore everyone else with it, is 85% sewn up by Hallmark and American Greetings. So you actually, although it's a big market, you won't get into 85% of it. So don't get, don't over-project on your figures. You won't break into as much of it as you think you might. And there are specialist American distributors who deal with the remaining 15%. So you can start building your list and asking around as to who those guys are going forward. The other thing about growing is to keep chatting with your distributors as you go, so you work out what works and what doesn't work for them. So for example, in Germany, we sell primarily square cards. In Germany, you pay more to send a square card through the post, whereas if it's a rectangular card, it's cheaper. So initially, our German guy tested us on squares, and then he said, you know what, I think we could sell a lot more of these if they were rectangular. Can you look at adapting the designs? So initially, it was kind of awkward positioning things, and then we started to bear that in mind as we were moving forward. And now a lot of our square designs are designed to be translated into rectangle. And also we brought a rectangular range into the UK market, and it really boosted sales. So there's sort of a lot of things come out of export, have come out of export as we've gone. So, and as we've grown, we had to keep an eye on cash flow, but equally we've also had to get a lot cleverer and quicker at how we run things, which has meant that we made more profit in the UK dealing with our UK customers. So talking more about that then on the operations side, our team had to get leaner and quicker and better at shipping things. Our warehouse had to get better. So we don't outsource our warehousing, we do it all in-house. And our team had to just get better and faster at shipping stuff and we had to get better at stock holding so that we hold the right amount of stuff for our UK base. And we had to get better at turning around things faster for our international customers. Usually with most of our international customers, they're so large that we get bespoke orders done for them, so they might order 30,000 cards at a time, whereas with our UK customers, they order in lots smaller amounts, particularly the independents. So one of the key things for us with operations was keeping our eye on the ball in the UK. It's really easy when you start selling abroad to get all excited, and there's massive orders sometimes with these international customers, and then you're so busy keeping an eye on all of that, you're forgetting your independents who are higher profit margin for you and more stable for your business because there's a bigger spread of them. You don't have all your eggs in just a few baskets. When you're dealing internationally. So. Definitely make sure, for sure in your planning, make sure that you can handle yourself operationally growing forward. And the way we did that for us was we just stayed based in the UK for a long time before we did do 2 or 3 countries early on in about the 3rd or 4th year, and then we just pulled back from it and focused primarily on the UK. So we got to make all our mistakes operationally, but all our mistakes with designs. So by the time we came to exporting, we knew for sure what a good card looked like and what a good selling card looked like. Also on the operations side, you know, we had to get, when I say lean, we had to get rid of any dead weight in our business, which is actually really good for us. Sometimes you can find yourself, I don't know what it's like for you if you've got a small business, but when you first start, I felt really grateful that anyone was working with us, you know, and often I was like, well, why am I doing this, and why isn't it them that's in my position? And so sometimes we would put up with things as business owners that, you know, when you talk to the dragons in Dragon's Den, they would just be like, just sack him, you know, or Alan Sugar, you know, he sacks bad people for a reason. And so, you know, we probably held on to people who weren't good for our business, because if you've got a rotten egg in your basket, it will affect your good people as well. So we had to get better in terms of everyone pulling their weight within the business. We couldn't carry anyone anymore. Usually when you're shipping internationally, you're making less money, but you're getting higher volume, which will offset those lower margins. So typically in the card industry, for example, you would give away up to 50% discount to these international sales, but you don't have a sales agent involved, and the margins are a lot lower. They're very thin, but the volumes are very high. And the other way of looking at it as well is you are in a territory that you just wouldn't be in if you didn't do that deal. So we had to get tight with how we ran things. We had to get tight on how we managed our costings as well. The bigger volumes meant also that we could go back to our print companies and say, well, look, you know, we were doing, I don't know, say 500,000 cards last year. This year we're doing 750,000 cards. You know, what can we talk about doing a deal on our overall pricing structure? So very much keep that in mind as you're going forward. And then getting leaner on our pricing meant that we were again making better margins in the UK, which meant that we could do more here and develop more products. So, so yeah, as you go, stay in tight control of your operations. The lingo. So this isn't just about language. This section is also about the different terminologies that you use. So, so language, I'll just speak about that briefly. Language, it can be an issue. It's not been a major issue for us. Most of the people that we meet have been through shows. We haven't gone abroad much to find our distributors. I mean, in the card industry, a lot of them come here because the UK market is the leading market in the world for cards, so it's a bit like London or Milan is for fashion. So most of those people, they do speak good English. We have had 1 or 2 where their English hasn't been that great. We had a French distributor for a while, and they were quite hard to work with. I speak a smattering of French, but probably not good enough. So, you know, to do a lot of good business with. So it was very basic with them. We managed to get muddle through, but we always have very strict rules when we're changing a language, for example. So with our distributor, we would want the codes listed out of our cards, the product codes, what the original English text was and the description of the card, and then what they want putting on in French. And that has to be 100% accurate on like an Excel spreadsheet. And then we will do a mock-up of those cards, so they're exactly as they've asked for. We will show those mock-ups in a low-res PDF to them, and they will approve those. And once they've approved them and they go to press, then if there's any problems and there's been a mistake on their side with the translation not being accurate, then, you know, that's their fault. If there's a mistake on our side, it's our fault and we have to take care of it. Now, that sounds great, but the reality is you don't want any faults or any problems, because even if they made an innocent mistake and it is their mistake, it's very frustrating for them, just as it is for you if you make a mistake. So you've got to pay close attention, and actually it's almost worth double checking and triple checking with them so they fully understand what you're doing. And we had it once with the German distributor, and at the show I'd said to him, we can do these, but the lettering was all hand stitched, and I said we can change the lettering, no problem, but it'll be a font, because the hand stitching just is too time consuming for us and it won't be worth us doing this for you at the price you want to pay. And when the cards arrived, even though we'd sent him the mock-ups, he thought the mock-ups were to show where the words would go and not actually how they would look. And so, you know, it's just important to be really clear all the way through. Fortunately, in that instance, he managed to sell them no problem, but it wasn't ideal. So the other thing to do with lingo is just to be aware of some of the terminology. So you've got words like FX, which means foreign exchange. So as you as you buy and sell internationally, so we buy acrylic jewels in to go onto our cards from China. We pay them in dollars. We have a customer. Most of our customers internationally, we sell to them in pounds, so they pay us in pounds. But we have some that pay us in euros and some that pay in dollars. So we've had to get euro and dollar accounts, and then we talk to FX providers to get the best deal to transfer that back into pounds when we're ready. Now, some people can buy their currency in forward with their FX providers, so they say, well, I don't want to stomach the risk of the pound going up and down in terms of its value over the year against the dollar, so can you say it fluctuates between 1.4 and 1.6, they might say, well, the currency provider would say, okay, we'll sell you a bunch of it at forward at 1.5. So during this year, we will give you this amount, this exchange rate on this amount of currency. So the banks will tend to charge a higher amount. So if you've just got the dollar account, you transfer it straight back into a pound account. It'll be more expensive than if you use a specialist provider. Just be wary of the specialist providers. If you exhibit at any of these shows, they just scrape all the data off and put you on a list, and you'll get calls all the time from these people. I had it once where I had an FX provider call me, and I thought that the rate was better than my current provider, so I went with them. I transferred, I did it was $50,000. I sent it over to the provider. I was like waiting for my money to come back. The money didn't come back, and I had a panic thinking, and then I started going online going, oh, where are they? Are they real? And they were real. And it just was that the money got caught up, but I was very much aware that, God, that guy on the phone could have been anyone, and I just sent my money. So, be very mindful of checking out your providers, get some references, make sure they're legit. I could have done something very stupid there and innocently, and I wasn't, but it could have been. So also, all those FX providers will tend to offer you a good rate going in, and then filter you up on a hard rate. So it's good. I have 2 or 3 that I've used over the years, and often I will just randomly cross compare them from time to time to make sure that we're still getting a good rate and that it's competitive with the rate that our bank would give us as well. So that's just something to bear in mind. One other thing to say about the exchange rates is just that whilst it's great for me to do a deal in pounds with a distributor, say for example with my German distributor, if the pound suddenly gets stronger and it's costing them more, even though I have done the deal in pounds, the reality is that you have to find a middle ground between the two of you always with the fluctuations in currency. Never has that been more true than right now with the currency with the US dollar, for example, that's dropped from 145, 150 down to 120 to 125, and it's the pound's the weakest it's been for a long time. So the deals that I've done with a lot of my export have been that's been in their favor. And now I pay close attention to this. If I want to, I can at some point put the prices up. And for the time being, I'm just happy because they've got a good deal and they're buying lots and lots of product from me. Now, it may be that they don't keep an eye on that, and when the currency goes back up towards 1.5, they come and say they want a deal. But I'll be able to say to them, well, look, you've had it good for this period, and now it's my turn. So, having said that, you don't want to lose them. So it's good to just keep the price in the middle ground between you at all times if you can. So I'm just trying to think if there's anything else to mention about lingo. There's a couple of paperweight terms, but I'm going to just mention them in the paperweight section. So so paperwork, it's a bit boring, I know, but I just mentioned a few things about it. Just the Department for International Trade can take you through much more of the detail, and there are specialist seminars and stuff that they do on these kind of things. But simple things are, for example, if you sell into Europe, you have to fill in an EC sales list form if you're VAT registered. That's monthly. So that basically on that form that just says I sold to these people and I sold this amount to these people. Now what's really important about that for you guys is that if you sell to someone in France, for example, and they say, oh no, I'm VAT registered, you don't charge me VAT, you don't have to charge me VAT. You must get their VAT number before you ship the goods, and you must check it. There are online checking. You can just do VAT checker or European VAT checker online. Check that number is valid and it matches who they say they are, because if you get a false number or you don't get any number and you don't charge them VAT, the Inland Revenue can come to HMSRC, can come to you and say, well, there's no evidence that these people are VAT registered. You should have charged them VAT, and we want the money. Thank you very much. And you will be obliged to pay them that 20%. So it's just important to be aware of that when you're shipping into these countries. And that EC sales list form is a bit of a nuisance, but if you're running software like we use Sage for our account software, it literally is the click of a button every month. And the important thing is that you set up the account right, so you set up the customer record with the the EU VAT number. So the front of that number usually has a country code on it. Like for us, it's GB, and it's different for the other countries. So the other thing is, if you're not selling into Europe and you sell to somewhere like Switzerland or Norway in Europe, but you just be careful, double check they are in the EC. A lot of this is obviously going to change soon, I guess. But for now, check that those countries, so when we sell to Switzerland and Norway, we have certain requirements. Once we hit a certain level, we have to fill in new forms. Again, I'm not going to I'm going to say exactly what those are because it'd be better you take advice from professionals on that. So from the guys at DIT. I'm just trying to think. The other paperwork that's really important is that you need to sometimes you'll need to do multiple delivery notes for the freight forwarders. So and again, usually when we deal with distributors, it's their responsibility to collect the cards from the UK. We will deliver to their freight forwarders in the UK, but from there they ship out and they pay those costs, and they also pay their own shipping and their own warehousing costs. So with those guys, speak with them up front, so in advance of when you're shipping the goods, because they'll want to know like what size is the pallet that's coming in, how much do you think it'll weigh, how many goods are on it. So if you can give them a rough idea up front and then say to them what paperwork do you need, then you can get that all sorted well in advance, because it's always the way, suddenly things come in last minute, the order needs to leave on Friday and you're like, oh no, the paperwork. So try and have a heads up with these guys so you can be compliant with them. There are certain tax codes as well if you're importing certain goods. There's certain codes, like when we bring our jewels in from China, you have to on the paperwork you have to fill in a certain code so that you are on the right level of duty, and it's really obviously important because you're dealing with tax and everything to keep very good records. So you must have proof of shipping. You must be able to show HMRC if they come around that, yep, this order did leave to go to this customer. And another thing you need to show is if they send you a remittance advice, like by email or whatever, that you've got the paperwork to say, yep, here is the bank payment in my bank, here is their bank slip that the remittance thing, remittance paperwork that they sent through. Just keep that all in a folder for each year, and then they can see, because there are schemes, I think, I'm not familiar with them, but there are schemes where people conduct VAT fraud, and so they do it by pretending that stuff leaves the country when it doesn't, and pretending it comes in when it doesn't. And so you need to show that your goods have actually left. And it's really easy to forget that, particularly, I mean, I had it once where someone came on the stand and they said, well, I'm in Tenerife, can't you ship the cards here and let me take them? And I was like, well, I can do that, but I'd have to charge you VAT, and you'll have to sort out claiming that back as you leave, because I can't charge you without VAT. Otherwise, I would have been liable to pay that VAT. So it's really important to keep all your paperwork in order. And I just want to mention opportunities. So I did mention briefly that out of this the German example where the card we changed the size of the cards, we had the opportunity to do rectangular cards, and that opened up a new product in the UK market that did really well for us and boosted sales of other products. So there are certain opportunities that come along like that, and I would advise you to spend time chatting with your distributors, because these are people who are ambassadors for your product in their countries, but they're also selling through a team of sales agents like you are here, and they're really keen to make the product work. So they're paying attention to everything that works and doesn't work, and they might pick up on stuff that you miss or you haven't seen here. So, the rectangular card is an example. I've got my Italian distributor has done well with going to all these shops. I just realized this guy is really great at marketing. There are some marketing tips that I can pick up from him. And so we had dinner the other night, and there are just a few little tweaks that I can do in my business. I mean, I'm a big lover of marketing anyway, and I do a lot, but you can always improve. And so I find it really inspiring and motivating spending time with these guys, in the same way that I find the same thing with my sales agents in the UK. So just to wrap up, the two takeaways, they've asked me to do two takeaways for this. So start building your list really early on, and that can be of retailers, it can be of distributors, it can be of international sales agents, it can even be of international shows. And plan your growth really carefully, certainly in terms of your cash flow, in terms of how your operations can handle your business as it grows, in terms of your team, and how good they are. Are they capable of doing these things? Do you need someone who speaks another language in your business or speaks several languages? And if you don't, have you got people that you can outsource that to? If you do need anyone, by the way, there's a company that I recommend that we use, and I can put you in touch with them.